The rain had stopped just as the taxi pulled up to the curb, but the air hung heavy with the scent of wet earth and regret. Madison stepped out, her boots sinking slightly into the softening lawn, and stared at the house that should have felt like home. It was her house now, inherited from her parents 6 months ago, yet the front door was bolted shut from the inside, a chain rattling faintly as someone yanked it tighter. "Madison? Is that you?" Her brother's voice cracked through the wood, not with relief, but with the sharp edge of accusation that sliced deeper than any storm. She froze, key in hand, the metal cold against her palm like a promise broken before it could turn. Skylar's fingers brushed her arm, a silent anchor in the gathering dusk. But even that touch couldn't steady the tremor that started in Madison's chest and spread like wildfire. Act 1 began in the shadow of that locked door, where every knock echoed back unanswered, pulling Madison back into the life she had fled 5 years earlier. The house stood on Elm Street in Willow Creek, Ohio, a fading suburb where maple trees lined the roads and Friday nights meant high school football under floodlights. It was the kind of place that bred familiarity like ivy on brick, clinging even when you tried to prune it away. Madison had left at 23, suitcase in one hand and a one-way ticket to New York in the other, chasing the blur of city lights that promised anonymity and art. She had become a freelance photographer there, capturing the raw pulse of urban lives, street protests in Brooklyn, lovers tangled in Washington Square Park, the solitary glow of a saxophonist in the subway. Her lens had always found beauty in the broken, but now, standing before her own fractured legacy, it felt like betrayal. Skylar waited in the taxi at first, her presence a quiet rebellion against the isolation Madison had warned her about. They had met 2 years ago at a gallery opening in Soho, where Madison's exhibit of intimate portraits hung like confessions on the walls. Skylar, fresh from a teaching job in Queens, had lingered by a photo of 2 women sharing a cigarette on a fire escape, their eyes locked in that fragile space between desire and doubt. "You make longing look like home," she had said, her voice soft but steady, and in that moment, Madison felt seen not as a runaway, but as whole. Now, as the taxi idled, Skylar watched through the rain-streaked window, her heart twisting at the sight of Madison's shoulders hunching under the weight of rejection. She paid the driver with a murmur of thanks and stepped out, umbrella forgotten in the seat. The gravel crunched under her sneakers as she approached, slipping her hand into Madison's without a word. Together, they faced the door again, the chain's metallic gleam a barrier as unyielding as the family's unspoken verdict. Inside, voices murmured like distant thunder. Her brother Ethan, 32 and still living in the basement apartment he had claimed after Dad's heart attack, was the one who had answered. He had always been the golden child, the one who stayed, who mowed the lawn and fixed the gutters, earning quiet nods of approval from their parents. Aunt Clara, who had moved in after Mom's passing to help with the estate, was there too, her shrill tones cutting through the wood. "We can't let her in, Ethan. Not like this. The neighbors. And what about the will? She abandoned us." Madison leaned her forehead against the door, the paint chipped and cool beneath her skin. A sigh escaped her, long and ragged, carrying the ache of years unspoken. She had come back because the lawyer's letter had arrived like a ghost in her mailbox, a summons to settle the estate, to claim the house that was rightfully hers. But the real pull was deeper, a thread of guilt woven through memories of hospital beds and unanswered calls. She had grieved from afar, sending flowers and checks, but never her presence. Now, with Skylar by her side, she wanted to mend what she could, to stand in the kitchen where Mom used to hum while baking apple pies, to sit on the porch swing with Ethan and talk about the brother he once was. "Open the door, Ethan," Madison called, her voice steady despite the quiver in her throat. "This is my house. Legally, morally. It's mine." Silence stretched, broken only by the drip of water from the eaves. Then, a shadow shifted behind the frosted glass pane, and the chain scraped again, locking tighter. "Go away, Madison. We talked about this on the phone. You made your choices. Live with them." Skylar's grip tightened, her thumb tracing circles on Madison's knuckles, a rhythm of reassurance amid the storm. She had heard the stories on the drive from the airport, the tense family dinners where Madison's silence about her life in the city spoke louder than words. The Bible verses Aunt Clara slipped into cards like veiled warnings. Skylar knew the weight of chosen families, having lost her own support when she came out at 19. But seeing it play out here, in this slice of heartland America, felt like stepping into a photograph Madison had once taken a frozen moment of exclusion. Sharp and unforgiving. They retreated to the rental car. A nondescript sedan parked crookedly in the driveway, its engine ticking as it cooled. Madison slid into the passenger seat, her body curling inward, knees drawn up like a shield. I thought. Maybe time had softened them. Her words dissolved into a pause, heavy with the unsaid. Skylar started the car, navigating the familiar streets of Willow Creek with the GPS's indifferent voice guiding them to a roadside motel on the edge of town. The neon sign flickered vacancy, a hollow welcome in the gathering night. The motel room smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner, its walls papered in faded florals that peeled at the corners. Madison dropped her bag by the bed, the thud echoing her exhaustion, and sank onto the sagging mattress. Skylar joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist, pulling her close until their breaths synced in the dim lamplight. Tell me what you need, Skylar whispered, her lips brushing Madison's temple. A beat of silence. Then Madison turned, her eyes searching Skylar's face like a map to safer ground. You, she said simply. And in that word lay the bridge they had built across oceans of doubt. Their kiss started tentative, a question, then deepened into affirmation, hands mapping familiar paths under shirts and over skin. It was not desperation, but reclamation, a reminder that love could bloom in borrowed rooms, fierce and unyielding. Afterward, tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of bleach, Madison traced the curve of Skylar's shoulder, her voice a murmur against the dark. I left because I couldn't breathe here. The air felt like judgment. Every glance from the pews at church, every whisper after the pride flag rumor started in high school. Skylar listened, her fingers combing through Madison's hair, untangling knots both literal and not. She shared her own fragments, then the conservative upbringing in rural Pennsylvania, the scholarship to NYU that felt like escape, the first girl who kissed her under the bleachers and vanished by morning. Their stories wove together like threads in a quilt, patching the holes of isolation. But as sleep tugged at them, Madison's mind wandered back to the house, to the rooms upstairs where her old camera still gathered dust in the attic, waiting for her to return and see the world anew. The next morning dawned crisp, the Ohio sky a vast blue streaked with wisps of cloud. They drove to a diner on Main Street, the kind with checkered floors and booths worn smooth by decades of locals. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with a name tag reading Doris, poured coffee without asking, her eyes lingering on Skylar's hand resting casually on Madison's across the table. Back in town? Huh? Doris said, her tone neutral but probing. Madison nodded, stirring sugar into her mug, the spoon clinking like a metronome to her unease. Word traveled fast in Willow Creek, faster than the autumn wind stripping leaves from the branches. By noon, as they walked the leaf-strewn paths of the town park, an old classmate approached, her smile faltering at the sight of their linked arms. Madison? Wow. It's been forever. Heard you're, with someone now. The pause hung, loaded, and Madison felt the old instinct to shrink, to deflect with a laugh. But Skylar's presence steadied her, a quiet strength that said, we are here. They spent the afternoon exploring the edges of what was once Madison's world, the library where she had hidden in the stacks with dog-eared novels about far-off places. The creek where she and Ethan had skipped stones until their palms blistered. Skylar listened as Madison pointed out landmarks, her voice weaving nostalgia with ache. This town raised me, but it also taught me to hide. A sigh, soft and resigned, and Skylar pulled her into a hug under the old willow tree, its branches draping like a curtain around their privacy. That evening, they returned to the house, emboldened by daylight. The chain was still in place, but a note had been taped to the door in Ethan's careful script, lawyer tomorrow. 10 a.m. Come alone. Madison's stomach nodded, but Skylar's hand on her back smoothed the tension. We'll face it together, she said. And in her eyes, Madison saw the future they had sketched in late-night talks, a small apartment in Brooklyn with darkroom space and bookshelves. Weekends hiking in the Catskills. A life unapologetic. As night fell, they drove out of town, chasing the horizon toward Cleveland, where Madison had booked a room in a boutique hotel overlooking Lake Erie. The city lights glittered like scattered diamonds on the water, a contrast to Willow Creek's quiet dimness. In the hotel bar, over glasses of red wine, they talked of contingencies. What if the family contested the will? What if the house slipped away like sand? Skylar's laugh, warm and unexpected, cut through the what-ifs. Then we build our own. Brick by brick. Photo by photo. Their lovemaking that night was slower, more deliberate, bodies moving in the rhythm of waves lapping the shore below. Madison arched under Skylar's touch, whispering names like prayers, feeling the barriers of distance and doubt dissolve in the heat of connection. Afterward, as rain pattered against the window, Madison confessed the fear that had shadowed her return. I wanted them to see us, to understand. Not just tolerate, but love. Skylar held her closer, her voice a steady hum. They might, in time. But we don't wait for permission to be happy. Sleep came then. Fitful for Madison. Dreams tangled with locked doors and open skies. The lawyer's office was a squat brick building on the outskirts of Willow Creek, its waiting room furnished with vinyl chairs and stacks of outdated magazines. Madison arrived alone. As requested, her camera bag slung over her shoulder like armor. Ethan and Aunt Clara were already there, seated stiffly across from Mr. Hargrove, a man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a tie loosened at the collar. The air smelled of ink and old paper, the clock on the wall ticking like a countdown. Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat, unfolding the will with deliberate care. As executor, I've reviewed everything. The house goes to Madison, per your parents' wishes. No contests. Ethan's face reddened, his fists clenching on his knees, while Aunt Clara's lips thinned into a line. But the lifestyle, she interjected, her voice pitching high. We can't have that in the family home. Think of the scandal. Madison's breath caught, a sharp inhale that filled the room with her resolve. It's not your home to judge. Mom and Dad knew me. They left it to me because they trusted I'd honor it my way. The words hung, heavy with the truth she had carried across states. Ethan shifted, his eyes meeting hers for the first time without armor. You left us, Mads. When Mom was sick. You were gone. The accusation landed like a stone in still water, ripples of guilt spreading. Madison leaned forward, her voice softening. I was scared. Of this exact moment. But I sent money. I called. I loved from afar because close felt impossible. A pause, the room holding its breath. And then Mr. Hargrove slid the keys across the desk. It settled. Possession tomorrow. Outside. Under a sky-threatening rain. Ethan caught her arm. Wait. His voice was rough, edged with something like regret. I didn't mean. It's just hard. Seeing you like this. Madison searched his face, seeing the boy who had shared secrets under blanket forts. Like this? Happy? In love? He looked away, jaw tight, but nodded once. Yeah. Maybe. She drove back to Cleveland alone, the highway blurring through tears she finally let fall. Skylar met her at the hotel door, reading the story in her silence before words could form. They walked to the lakeside, wind whipping their hair, and Madison spilled it all, the will, the words, the fragile crack in the wall. Skylar listened, then pulled a small notebook from her pocket, sketching words like poetry, fragments of a life they could claim. That night, as thunder rolled over the lake, their connection deepened, bodies and souls entwining in a dance of forgiveness and fire. Madison's sighs mingled with the storm, release in every touch, every whispered vow. Dawn broke clear, and they returned to Willow Creek, the house waiting unlocked, its windows catching the light like eyes finally opening. Act 2 unfolded in the creak of floorboards and the dust motes dancing in sunlight slanting through the living room windows, where Madison and Skylar claimed their space amid boxes of forgotten relics. The house breathed with memories, the faded wallpaper in the hallway bearing pencil marks of childhood heights, the kitchen table scarred from family dinners that once rang with laughter before silence crept in. Madison unpacked first, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted a photo album from the shelf, its pages yellowed with time. Skylar watched from the doorway, a mug of tea steaming in her hands, her presence a gentle intrusion into the solitude Madison had always sought in chaos. Start with the small things, she suggested. stepping closer to trace a finger along the spine of the album. Together, they flipped through images: mom in her Sunday best, dad with a fishing rod, Ethan gap-toothed and grinning beside a younger Madison, her hair in braids and eyes wide with wonder. A sigh escaped Madison, deep and wavering, as she lingered on a shot of the four of them at the county fair, cotton candy staining their smiles. This was before, she murmured, the word encompassing the unraveling the arguments over her phase, the church youth group's cold shoulders after she was seen holding hands with a girl at the mall. Skylar nodded, her own memory surfacing like echoes: the rejection letters from family after her coming out, the empty chair at Thanksgiving. Before becomes after, if we let it. Her words were a bomb. And Madison leaned into her, the album sliding to the floor as their lips met, soft at first, then urgent, a reclaiming of the space around them. They spent the day transforming the house, not with paint or furniture, but with touches of their shared life. Skylar hung a print of Madison's cityscape series in the hallway, its bold lines a counterpoint to the muted tones of suburbia. Madison set up her darkroom in the basement, the chemical tang of developer mingling with the musty air, while Skylar arranged books on the shelves upstairs: novels by Audre Lorde and Alison Bechdel, spines cracked from late-night readings. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly when they discovered Dad's old record player, spinning a dusty vinyl of Patsy Cline, her voice crooning through the rooms like a ghost made friendly. But the piece fractured that afternoon when Ethan's truck rumbled into the driveway, unannounced. He stood on the porch, toolbox in hand, his flannel shirt rumpled and eyes shadowed. Heard you got the keys. Figured the gutters needed fixing before winter. Madison hesitated in the doorway, the threshold a line she wasn't sure he had crossed. Skylar appeared behind her, wiping flour from her hands from an impromptu pie attempt, her smile polite but watchful. Ethan's gaze flicked between them, lingering on the casual drape of Skylar's arm around Madison's waist. Baking already? Mom would approve. The words were an olive branch. Tentative. And Madison stepped aside, gesturing him in. They worked in awkward tandem, he on the ladder outside, she passing tools through the window while Skylar prepared sandwiches in the kitchen. Conversation started: stilted talk of the weather, the new Walmart on the highway, then eased into safer waters. Ethan's stories of his auto shop, the loyal customers who treated him like kin. At lunch, seated at the scarred table, the air thickened. Aunt Clara had called Ethan that morning, her voice shrill over speakerphone, railing about defiling the family legacy. He had hung up, but the echo lingered. She's worried about resale value, he said now, avoiding Madison's eyes as he bit into his ham on rye. Skylar arched a brow, her tone light but pointed. Houses hold love, not judgments. We've already made it ours. Ethan paused, sandwich halfway to his mouth, and for a moment, the room held its breath. Then he chuckled, low and reluctant. You always were the fighter, Mads. Remember when you punched Tommy Jenkins for calling me Four Eyes? Madison smiled, the memory a spark in the dimness, and nodded. Someone had to. The laughter shared then was fragile, but real, a thread pulling them closer. He left as dusk fell, promising to return for dinner soon, and Madison watched his truck fade down Elm Street, a mix of hope and wariness churning in her gut. Skylar drew her into the living room, where they collapsed on the couch, feet tangled. That was progress, Skylar said, her fingers threading through Madison's hair. Madison hummed agreement, but doubt lingered, a shadow at the edges. Their evening unfolded in quiet intimacy. Dinner by candlelight scavenged from Mom's drawer, wine from a corner store bottle. As plates cleared, Skylar pulled Madison to the porch swing, the chains creaking under their weight. Stars pricked the sky, sharp against the black, and Madison leaned her head on Skylar's shoulder, the swing's gentle rock a lullaby. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, she confessed, her voice barely above the rustle of leaves. Skylar turned, cupping her face, eyes reflecting the moonlight. Then we'll dodge it together. Their kiss tasted of Merlot and possibility, deepening as hands wandered, the night air cool against heated skin. They made love there on the swing, slow and unhurried, bodies sinking with the creak of wood and whisper of wind, a declaration to the empty street. The following days blurred into a rhythm of rediscovery. Madison ventured into town, her camera slung around her neck, capturing Willow Creek through fresh eyes, the barber shop's striped pole spinning lazy circles. The bakery's window fogged with the promise of cinnamon rolls. Old faces softened by time. Skylar joined her on walks. Her teachers noting the stories in graffiti on the water tower. The resilience in a community garden tended by widows. They volunteered at the local shelter one afternoon, sorting donations, where Madison photographed a young girl with braids clutching a donated doll. Her smile fierce and fleeting. Word of their presence rippled outward. Not all gentle. A grocery run turned tense when a former neighbor, Mrs. Hargrove, no relation to the lawyer, crossed their path in the aisle. Her cart halting abruptly. "Madison Ellis? You've changed." The pause dripped with implication. Her eyes darting to Skylar loading apples into a bag. Madison straightened, chin lifting. "For the better. How's bridge club?" The deflection landed with humor. And Mrs. Hargrove huffed away. But the encounter left a bruise. Faint but tender. That night, alone in the attic, Madison sorted through boxes of her past journals filled with sketches and pressed flowers. Letters never sent. Skylar found her there, cross-legged amid the dust, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. "It's all here," Madison whispered, holding up a faded Polaroid of herself at 16. Arm around a girl named Riley. Their first tentative love cut short by rumors and relocation. Skylar knelt beside her, gathering the pieces. "And now it's here too." She pressed Madison's hand to her chest, over her heart, and they cried together. Release in the shared salt. Healing came in layers, peeled back slowly. Ethan returned for dinner, bringing beer and stories of their childhood adventures, bike rides to the quarry, fireflies in jars. Aunt Clara's absence loomed. Her calls to Ethan laced with pleas to talk sense into her, but he deflected, his loyalty shifting like sand. One evening, as they grilled burgers in the backyard, fireflies flickering like living stars, Ethan raised his bottle. "To new starts." The clink echoed, and Madison felt the knot in her chest loosen. Just a fraction. Skylar wove herself into the fabric seamlessly, her warmth drawing Ethan out. Her questions gentle probes into his guarded world. "What's the one car you dream of restoring?" she asked over dessert. And he lit up, describing a '67 Mustang with the fervor of a poet. Madison watched them, a swell of gratitude mixing with the ever-present ache. Love, she realized, was not a zero-sum. It expanded, filling rooms once empty. Yet conflict brewed beneath the surface, a storm gathering on the horizon. Aunt Clara arrived uninvited one Sunday morning, her sedan crunching gravel like bones underfoot. She stood on the porch, Bible clutched like a shield, her face a mask of righteous concern. "Madison, we need to talk. About your soul." Skylar was in the kitchen, but Madison felt her presence like a shield at her back. "Aunt Clara, come in." "But it's not just my soul on the table." The living room confrontation stretched taut, words flying like sparks from flint. Clara decried the lifestyle, quoting verses with fervor, while Madison countered with memories of Mom's quiet acceptance. The way she had slipped a 20 into Madison's pocket before she left, whispering, "Be brave, baby." Ethan hovered in the doorway, torn, his silence a roar. Skylar entered then, calm as a lake at dawn, offering tea with a steadiness that disarmed. "We're family too, if you'll let us." Clara's resolve cracked, just enough for doubt to seep in. She left with a huff, but not before pressing a worn prayer card into Madison's hand. "Pray on it." The door clicked shut, and Madison sagged against Skylar, the weight of battle heavy. "She'll come around," Skylar murmured, but Madison's sigh spoke volumes. That afternoon, they escaped to the road, driving aimlessly toward the Hocking Hills, where forests carpeted the earth in emerald. The hills rose like ancient guardians, trails winding through mossy rocks and babbling streams. They hiked hand in hand, the air crisp with pine and earth, pausing at a waterfall to share a blanket and sandwiches. Madison snapped photos, the cascades mist haloing Skylar's hair, her laugh echoing off the stones. "This is what freedom looks like," Madison said, lowering the camera to kiss her, the world narrowing to the taste of salt and wildness. Their night in a cabin there was pure communion, fire crackling in the hearth as they moved together, shadows dancing on log walls. Madison's touches were reverent, exploring Skylar's curves with the devotion of an artist. Sighs punctuating the quiet. "I love you," she breathed. The words a vow etched in flame. Skylar's response was in her arch. Her gasp. Her hold that said forever. Back home. The respite felt temporary. Ethan's texts grew sporadic, laced with Clara's influence. And whispers reached Madison at the post office, tales of church meetings where her name was invoked like a cautionary tale. She poured the hurt into her work. Developing prints in the darkroom. Images of Willow Creek's underbelly, the boarded-up shops. The lone protester with a sign reading "Love Wins." Skylar supported from the edges. Grading papers at the kitchen table. Her red pen a slash of encouragement. The turning point came midweek. A call from the lawyer about a codicil Clara had unearthed, contesting the will on moral grounds. Madison's world tilted. Anger flaring hot. "They won't stop," she told Skylar that night. Pacing the bedroom. Moonlight silvering the floor. Skylar rose from the bed, pulling her into an embrace that grounded. "Then we fight smarter. With truth." They crafted a response together, letters to the lawyer. Emails to Ethan. Even a public post on the town Facebook group, Madison's photos paired with Skylar's words. A manifesto of belonging. The backlash was swift, nasty comments. Averted eyes at the diner, but so was the support, unexpected likes from old friends. A pie left on the porch with a note, "You're welcome here." Climax brewed as autumn deepened. Leaves carpeting the streets in crimson and gold. Ethan called late one night. Voice thick with drink. "Clara's pushing hard. Says she'll sell if you don't change." Madison's heart pounded. But Skylar's hand in hers steadied the rage. "Tell her the house stays with us." The line went dead. But the seed was planted. Act 3 ignited in the frost-kissed dawn of a Monday, when Madison and Skylar drove to the county courthouse in Chillicothe. 40 minutes south through fields dusted white. The building loomed gray and stern, its columns like sentinels guarding secrets. Inside, the hearing room smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Rows of benches empty save for Ethan slouched in the back. Aunt Clara ramrod straight beside the lawyer. She had hired a slick man from Columbus with a briefcase full of amendments. Mr. Hargrove represented Madison. His voice even as he presented the will. Unassailable in its clarity. Clara's attorney countered with fervor, waving the codicil, a scribbled note from years past, claiming undue influence. The deceased's intent was for a traditional family stewardship, he intoned, his gaze sliding to Skylar seated beside Madison. Her hand a quiet clasp under the table. Madison's pulse thrummed, a drumbeat of defiance. But she held still, letting the law speak. Testimonies followed, brief and barbed. Clara took the stand, her voice quavering with conviction. "My sister wanted her legacy protected, not tarnished." The word landed like a slap. And Madison flinched. Memories flooding of Mom's last letter. Tucked in her New York drawer, live true. Madison. That's the only inheritance that matters. Skylar squeezed her hand. A Morse code of "We've got this." Ethan's turn came. His reluctance etched in every shuffle. "I don't want the house," he admitted. Eyes on his boots. "But Clara. She's family. And Mads. You left a hole." The room stilled. His words a bridge cracking under weight. Madison rose then. Unbidden. Her voice cutting clear. "I left to breathe, Ethan. But I never stopped loving this place. Or you." She glanced at Clara, softening. "Auntie. Mom loved you fierce. But she loved me too, all of me. Honor that." The judge, a woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her hair, adjourned for deliberation. Her expression unreadable. Outside, in the crisp air, Ethan approached. Clara trailing like a shadow. "I didn't know about the letter," he said, handing Madison a crumpled envelope postmarked from the city. Inside, Mom's script, "Proud of your courage, kiddo. Bring her home someday." Tears pricked. And Madison hugged him. The embrace awkward but mending. Skylar pulled Clara aside. Her tone gentle. "We've all lost people. Let this be gain." Clara's facade wavered, a tear tracing her cheek. "I just wanted to keep them close." The admission hung, a key turning in a long-locked door. Hours later, the judge ruled the will intact. Codicil dismissed as hearsay. Clara nodded once. defeated but not broken. And left with her attorney. The sedan vanishing into the haze. Relief washed over Madison like rain after drought. But victory tasted bittersweet. Driving home. With Ethan following in his truck. She turned to Skylar. "What now?" Skylar smiled. Wind tousling her hair through the cracked window. "We live." The word was a mantra. Echoing as they pulled into Elm Street. The house bathed in late sun. Welcoming. The weeks that followed were a tapestry of tentative threads. Ethan moved his things from the basement. But not before dinners became ritual: burgers on the grill. Stories swapped over pie. He even brought a date once. A quiet mechanic named Lena. Her laugh easing the edges. Clara visited sporadically. Armed with casseroles instead of scriptures. Her conversations skirting the deep but dipping toes. "Your mother's pie crust was better," she'd say. And Madison would laugh. Passing the rolling pin. Madison dove into her photography. Exhibiting at the local Arts Council a show titled Roots and Routes. Prince blending Willow Creek's quiet with New York's pulse. Skylar taught workshops there. Her lessons on narrative weaving through Madison's visuals. Drawing crowds that murmured approval. One evening. After the opening. They walked home arm in arm. The town square's fountain bubbling softly. "People are looking different," Madison noted. A group of teens waving shyly. Skylar's grin was triumphant. "Because you're showing them how." Intimacy deepened in the house's embrace. Rooms once echoing now alive with their rhythm. Mornings found them in the kitchen. Coffee brewing as sunlight spilled over counters. Kisses stolen between sips. Afternoons in the darkroom. Skylar's arms around Madison's waist as images emerged from the tray, ghosts of pain transmuted to grace. Nights on the porch. Swing creaking. Bodies entwined under blankets. Sighs mingling with cricket song. "You're my horizon," Madison whispered one such evening. Her lips tracing Skylar's collarbone. Eliciting a gasp that bloomed into moan. Their lovemaking was poetry in motion. Tender and fierce. A celebration of bodies known and souls aligned. Yet shadows lingered. Tests of the fragile peace. Holiday season approached. Thanksgiving looming like a gauntlet. Invitations went out: Ethan and Lena. Clara with her famous yams and Madison City friends flying in for turkey. The table groaned under platters. Laughter tentative at first. Then flowing. Clara's toast faltered to family, then steadied with a glance at Skylar. All kinds. Glasses clinked. And Madison's chest swelled. Tears held back by joy. A crisis came unbidden 2 weeks later. When Ethan's shop flooded from a burst pipe. Tools ruined and insurance slow. Madison offered the garage. Skylar the muscle to haul. And together they transformed it into a makeshift workspace. Oil stains and all. Late nights there. Under fluorescent hum. Ethan opened up the divorce he hid. The loneliness that Clara's dogma filled. "I envied your escape," he admitted. Wrench pausing. Madison hugged him. Sweaty and sincere. "Stay for the building. Not the running." Skylar's influence rippled wider. Her school hosting a diversity assembly where Madison spoke. Camera capturing faces alight with recognition. A student approached after. Shy with a notebook. "Your pictures. They make me feel less alone." The words lingered. A ripple becoming wave. Winter settled. Snow blanketing Willow Creek in hush. They decorated the house, strings of lights twinkling in windows. A menorah beside the tree for Skylar's heritage. Blending traditions like lives. One stormy night. Power out. They huddled by the fireplace. Stories spilling into dark. Clara arrived unannounced. Snow-dusted. Bearing cocoa. "Can't sleep," she confessed. Settling in. Talk turned to Mom. Regrets aired like laundry. "I was scared for you," Clara said finally. To Madison. "But fear's a poor master." The hug that followed was bone deep. Forgiveness in the thaw. Madison's work gained notice: a gallery in Columbus requesting a solo show. Blending her dual worlds. Skylar beamed. Planning the trip. But a call from New York tugged old strings: an editor offering steady gig. Tempting with city lights. Doubt crept. Madison pacing the attic. "Do I belong here now?" Skylar found her. Pulling her down. "You belong where love is." That's portable. Their night was anchor. Touches grounding. Whispers vowing balance. Spring hinted early. Crocuses pushing through snow. Ethan proposed to Lena in the backyard. Ring glinting. And the party that followed was chaos joyful. With Clara toasting and Skylar DJing playlists. Madison captured it all. Lens finding beauty in the blur. The denouement whispered in quiet moments. Like the morning Madison woke to Skylar's note on the pillow, coffee's on. World's waiting. They sat on the porch. Mugs steaming. Watching birds flit. We've built something, Madison said. Hand in Skylar's. A nod. A kiss soft as dawn. The house stood behind them. No longer locked. But open, a testament to returns not always easy. But always worth. In the hush of early summer. Willow Creek unfolded like a long-held breath released. Dogwoods blooming pink against green lawns. The air humming with cicadas and possibility. Madison and Skylar's life wove deeper into the town's texture. No longer visitors but threads in the fabric. Madison's darkroom expanded to include community classes. Locals shyly framing their first shots of family picnics or rusted tractors. Eyes widening at the alchemy of light and shadow. Skylar's classroom buzzed with book clubs exploring queer voices. Students debating fun home with the fervor of discovery. Their essays piling on her desk like offerings. Ethan's wedding planning became a family affair. The backyard transformed into venue site with fairy lights strung through oaks and wildflowers in mason jars. Madison scouted locations for portraits. Her camera catching Lena's nervous joy. Ethan's softened gaze. Clara contributed recipes. Her kitchen visits with Madison turning confessional hours of chopping onions and stirring sauces. Tears blending with laughter. I saw too much of my own youth in you, Clara admitted one afternoon. Rolling dough with veined hands. Hiding. Pretending. Didn't want that for my niece. Madison paused. Flour dusting her apron. And pulled her into a hug scented with yeast and vanilla. You don't have to anymore. Skylar thrived in the rhythm. Her energy a spark igniting quiet corners. She organized a pride walk small scale. A dozen marchers circling the square with rainbow flags fluttering like prayers. Madison documented it. Shots of clasped hands and tentative smiles. Ethan walking beside them. His presence a quiet ally. The event ended at the diner. Doris serving free pie. Her wink conspiratorial. About time, she said. And the table erupted in cheers. Madison's hand finding Skylar's under the formica. Gratitude swelling like tide. Their love? The steady core? Deepened in stolen interstices. Mornings tangled in sheets. Sunlight filtering through curtains to paint stripes on bare skin. Madison's lips tracing the freckles across Skylar's nose. Eliciting giggles that dissolved into sighs. Afternoons by the creek. Sketching and snapping. Bodies cooling in shallow water. Kisses tasting of minerals and mint. Evenings on the swing. Wine loosening tongues. Confessions flowing easy as the breeze. You make the ordinary epic, Skylar murmured one twilight. Her head on Madison's lap. Fingers toying with a pendant a silver key Skylar had engraved with home. Madison bent to kiss her. Slow and savoring. The world fading to the pulse beneath her touch. Challenges arose. Subtle as summer storms. A school board member grumbled about Skylar's curriculum. Petitions circulating with veiled barbs. She faced it head-on. Presentation poised. Quoting data on empathy's power. Her voice unwavering. Madison stood in the back. Heart-pounding pride. And when it passed unanimously. They celebrated with ice cream on the courthouse steps. Spoons clinking like toasts. Ethan's shop hit a slump. Economy pinching wallets. But Madison's exhibit sales funded a new compressor. Skylar tutoring his niece in evenings. Family's verb. Not noun, Ethan said gruffly. Clapping Madison's shoulder. Clara's thawing brought its own tempests one evening. Over tea. She broached Madison's plans, eyes flicking to Skylar's ringless hand. Marriage? In this town? Tension coiled. But Madison breathed through it. Love doesn't need permission. Auntie. But we'd like yours. Clara's cup trembled. Then steadied. You have it. All of it. The words unlocked something. And later. Alone. Madison wept into Skylar's arms. Release cathartic. Their bodies finding solace in familiar cadence. Moans soft against pillows. Connection a harbor. Travel beckoned. A road trip west to the Badlands. Chasing Madison's wanderlust. They packed the sedan with snacks and playlists. Highways unspooling under tires. South Dakota's spires rose jagged against sky. Hikes through Badlands painting them in rust and sage. Evenings in motels. Maps spread on beds. Fingers tracing routes and ribs. Laughter echoing off thin walls. "This is us," Skylar said atop a butte. Wind whipping. Arms around Madison as sunset bled orange. Unmapped. But true. Returning. The house welcomed with open arms. Garden blooming under their care, tomatoes ripening red. Herbs scenting the air. Madison's New York offer resurfaced. Tempting with gallery prestige. But she countered with hybrid freelance. Balancing roots and reach. Skylar supported her own sabbatical dream to write curriculum guides. Collaborations blooming. Fall circled back. Leaves turning in fiery parade. Ethan's wedding a pinnacle. The ceremony under oaks was simple vows exchanged with tears. Lena's dress flowing white. Ethan's suit crisp. Madison officiated. Words heartfelt, love endures locks. Distances? Doubts. Clara walked Lena down. Her smile genuine. And as rings slipped on. Cheers rose. Fireflies winking approval. Reception spilled into night. Dancing barefoot on grass. Skylar twirling Madison until dizzy. Their kiss under stars, a vow unspoken. Later. In the quiet house. Guests departed. They collapsed laughing. Bodies slick with sweat and joy. Lovemaking followed. Urgent then languid. Hands mapping joy's terrain. Gasps punctuating the dark. "Forever starts here," Madison breathed. Forehead to Skylar's. Heart sinking in afterglow. Winter brought introspection. Snow muffling the world. They hosted solstice. Candles flickering. Stories shared encircle Ethan on loss. Clara on grace. Friends from afar via video. Madison's book deal landed. A photo essay thresholds. Weaving personal narrative with landscapes. Skylar edited chapters. Her insights sharpening prose. Their desk a chaos of notes and mugs. Spring renewal saw Clara move closer. A cottage down the street. Visits daily with gossip and grandkids to be dreams. Ethan's family grew. Lena pregnant. Ultrasounds passed like treasures. Madison and Skylar discussed their own future. Adoption whispers. Surrogacy sketches. Love expansive. One dawn. Madison woke Skylar with breakfast in bed. Pancakes heart-shaped. Coffee black. "Marry me?" she asked. Ring simple gold band etched with coordinates of their first kiss. Skylar's yes was tear-choked. Embrace fierce. The day dissolving into bliss, walks hand in ringed hand. Calls to spread joy. The wedding planned for summer solstice. Intimate under the willow. Vows promising endurance. As preparations hummed. Madison reflected in her journal, home isn't place. But people chosen and mended. We locked no one out, we opened wide. In the end. The house on Elm Street stood sentinel. Windows glowing against twilight. A beacon of what love forges from fracture. Madison and Skylar. Entwined on the porch. Watched fireflies rise. Sighs content. Hearts full. Life's narrative continued. Pages turning on grace. The humanistic echo lingering, belonging is built. One brave step at a time.